Welcome to the Undiscovered Gems podcast, hosted by NBA legend and business powerhouse Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds.
And welcome. My name is Charles D. Smith, and welcome to Undiscovered Gems. Today, we have the president of the Baltic Street Into Action 501c3. What do? They deploy music for mental health. We're going to find out a lot about that. We have Peter Jampel, who is a music therapist, and he's here to talk to us about how music can really just change lives and help people go from one stage to the next. Peter, welcome to the show.
Charles, so good to be with you.
Great. Peter, how long have you been doing this?
Charles, I started in 1973 as a music therapist, so it's been 51 years.
Wow. We're not going to ask you your age, but what is it? What is it that you do?
Well, I'm one of those lucky people who bring music into the lives of people who suffer from various disabilities. My area of specialization was working with adults who had serious and persistent mental health issues. I worked as the music therapist and then director of day treatment services for 35 years at a clinic in Brooklyn, New York. And I had the opportunity to see how music transformed people's lives through a way of finding themselves connecting with others through the power of music and the arts. Now, I want to just say, Charles, that it's not just music that I believe in and that Baltic Street Into Action supports. It's all the arts: music, art, dance movement, drama, poetry. We believe that the creative arts as a whole offers a spectrum of expressive opportunities for people who struggle with various disorders. And so my area of specialization was music. But in our heyday at Baltic Street, we had drama therapy, art therapy, dance therapy, and it was a celebration of the arts in recovery. And so I always felt I was the luckiest guy on the team because I was the music man. And
Right.
People looked at me in a way that was different than when they looked at their psychiatrist or their social worker or the nurse. I was the guy who, brought out the music in them, and there was music in practically every person I met.
So, Peter, let me ask you, what is and it might be more of a scientific question.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I had the experience. I take care of a friend of mine who is in a home. She has dementia, and music is the language that we both speak when I go see her. She can always remember music from the 60s, 70s, and the turn. What is that? Why is music, and what is the connection that's made? The person can't speak. The person may not recognize people, but for some reason, sound and music in particular wakes them up. Why is that? What happens in our brains?
Because there's an occurrence that happens in the brain called neuroplasticity, which music has an alternate neural pathway that is different than language, speech, and memory associated through language and speech. Musical memory has a direct pipeline from the brain, which is relatively undamaged, whereas a person with advanced dementia has serious neurological cognitive deficits. So the brain, in its wondrous construction, has a different neural pathway that musical memories pour out of. So your friend can still hear music and even remember lyrics where she can't remember your name. But the lyrics are embedded in that musical pathway that allow her to access musical memories and associations, which bring her alive. So, it is one of the advantages of music therapy that we tap into a part of the brain which is still accessible to people with serious dementia.
Understood. Thank you for answering that. Peter, what experiences did you have in your life that kind of put you on the path? Were you a musician growing up? Talk to us about how you've come to this point in your life. What was that pathway like?
Yeah. Well, yes, I was a musician, but I was also, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was headed to law school, maybe. I didn't know really if that was my destiny, where I really felt my passion. But I knew in my own family that music played a huge role in bringing us together as a family unit. My father suffered from serious recurrent depression. And he was a musician as a young man and hadn't played for over 20 years. And during one of his worst periods, I got interested in his old tenor banjo, which was in the basement. And I said, Dad, I think I want to play it. So he fixed it up for me. And as I got into music, I got my father back into music. And he played tenor sax, he played piano, he played the violin, and he played the tenor banjo. And my dad and I started to play music together. And as I got better and better, my mother had a beautiful voice, and the three of us started playing together as a family. My brother was only too happy to let us play, and hearing music and hearing us connect was such a huge lift for the entire family. And so in my own life and experience, I saw the power of music and how it brought my dad back from these depths of his depression, and just seeing his face playing music again just was a beautiful thing to watch. So I realized from my own experience how music, it can bring people together and can create a deep connection. So that was my early experience, Charles. And then I saw it work with the patients that I work with at my clinic.
Sure.
One of the things that I realized was that not only did music form a sense of belonging in community, and we were a community day treatment program, and music and the arts became the hub of what brought us together. People from all walks of life who were brought together, unfortunately, through the sad circumstance of mental illness. They didn't choose to be there. The thing that really broke through was that we all had music as a common source of connection. And music of every culture, Brooklyn, New York, we serve Park Slope, Red Hook, Carroll Gardens, and our community created a sense of connection through music. We then had a full auditorium in the basement, and we developed a monthly nightclub called the After Hours Club. And we brought musicians in from all over Brooklyn and beyond. And we created a network within Brooklyn, and then New York City, then nationally, then internationally. I taught at New York University's music therapy program, Charles, for 39 years also, while I was doing this. So I had a lot of connections around the New York City metropolitan area and around the world. And the After Hours Club became the hub of our program. And
Right.
then we developed a band in 1991, the Baltic Street Band, in its heyday, and it still exists now, became a source of people who loved music and who were talented being able to come together as a performing group. And so that was an additional element of the music therapy program there, celebrating the art culture of our people through the increased talent and accomplishments of the Baltic Street
Right.
Band.
You know, I read something that now actually is making me think that I'm going to give music a higher nod than sports for the first time in my life. You know, people say that sports unifies people and brings them together, but when it brings them together, they're visually watching, cheering, and connecting together to root for a team. However, I read something you said,
Mhm.
music has an equality where people from all ages, racial backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, disabilities can all play music together. It's
Yes.
an action that can participate. And I never thought of it like that. So I want you to give us an example of your therapy and you're working with different groups and people of different ages, and they're all getting healed at the same time.
Yeah. Well, a good example would be the bass player in my band, who was born in a small island in the Caribbean, came to this country as a young man, was a very accomplished bass player, but unfortunately suffered from schizophrenia.
Mm,
And he uh, had an incredible memory. he was he heard it once, he played it. And he was such an intuitive, instinctive musician. He played bass on a professional album as a young man. But when I met him, he had fallen into really hard times. But
wow.
he became the anchor of our band. And his knowledge of Caribbean rhythms was hugely important. But he then expanded into so many musical genres that, it was wonderful to watch him fulfill uh, his great talent and
Wow.
become the musician that he could think of himself being as a young man. So for me, he then became the anchor of when you're a bass player, you hold down the line. You're both holding down the rhythm and you're holding down the underlying harmonic structure of the band.
Yep.
And that's who he was. But Charles, I want to say one thing about sports because I've played sports all my life.
Mm-hmm.
We developed a softball league amongst the different day treatment programs. And
Ah,
as you really understand, the connection between teammates is a huge uh, sacrifice of self into the giving for the betterment of others. So is a musical group that you
mm-hmm.
have
Mm-hmm.
to harness your own individual needs for the greater good of the team. And so a softball team, to me, acts like a band. Now, it's different because not everybody can play softball and not everybody can be in the band. But those people who are part of a performing group or an athletic team, they develop a rapport and a unselfishness that
Sure.
is hugely valuable. And then, of course, you have the rooting interest of the entire community who are represented by those athletes and by those musicians. And people bring their communities to the game or to the performance, and it's a way of getting to meet people from all over the metropolitan area and connecting on a deeper level. So I see parallels between
Sure.
sports and musicians that I think are really strong.
Right. Let's dig a little deeper and get more specific.
Yeah.
Talk about traumas, a couple illnesses, and well, let's just start with trauma.
Yeah.
Give us an example. How to have you dealt with someone to help them recover through a traumatic experience or some trauma in their life?
Well, here's an example. Right after 9/11,
Okay, good one.
the American Music Therapy Association and the National Academy for Recording Arts and Sciences, NARAS, created a music therapy relief project in New York City to deal with the survivors of 9/11 and how we could help create structures that could help them process their trauma. So
Sure.
I worked with another music therapist in a high school in Hoboken, New Jersey, with the direct survivors of people who crossed the river every day and were in the Twin Towers. And we worked for about 11 or 12 weeks, working directly through music, improvisation, and through the singing of familiar songs, and then verbal processing to create a way to help those survivors of 9/11
Sure.
process what took place and re-engage with other people who went through similar experiences, to normalize and create a way of dealing with the chaos and the confusion of what took place for them. So my experience in working with that kind of mass trauma was that it's very hard to talk about things like that. You don't know where to start, but music and the association of certain songs that connect you to either sadness or to joy or to inspiration or to other times in your life is a way of getting into it without pushing people who are not ready to talk about it. And I'll give you another example, which is happening tomorrow on my own podcast. We have a poetry therapist from the Ukraine who's going to be talking about her work with the veterans and their families of the Ukrainian war with Russia, and how poetry and art help them also process their trauma, and how traditional verbal means of therapy, working with direct trauma experiences, is often very hard initially to help people find a way out and a way through. So that, poetry therapist in the Ukraine is similar to a music therapist who I had on my podcast about a month ago, who's working in Israel with the survivors of the October 7th massacre. So, there have been music therapy projects with earthquake disasters in China, in Japan, 9/11, Ukraine, Gaza. It's become a very important tool to help deal with trauma and how the survivors can work through some of these issues.
Yeah. So Peter, how you move someone through trauma?
Yeah.
But then now, how does music also help someone transition from their trauma using music into a strategy, a career, or something else that they're doing afterwards, that now they're healed and now they have something else to live for and they get a career? How does that work?
Well, some people, it's just helping them to recover to their normal life and to get
Okay.
back to what feels like a recovery of their pre-existing structures. But for some people, um, their connection to music is so deep that they want to give that gift to others. So one of the
Mm.
projects that Baltic Street into Action supports is the development of peer arts training. Now, peers in mental health work extensively uh, through their own lived experience of mental illness to help others negotiate and navigate their way through the recovery process. But in
Sure.
peer arts training, we are helping peers develop skills to help others see the benefits of music and the arts in the recovery process. And we're developing a first generation of peers who can use their own recovery process in music and the arts now to help enhance their career opportunities, to work as arts specialists in various settings. So for those people, and this is not everybody, but there is a certain percentage of people who just love music, who may be trained musicians themselves and also have rediscovered music as part of their recovery process, but now they want to give back and give to others. And the highest form of giving is to be able to help others come through their experience. And what you get by giving to others, as I'm sure you're aware, I've heard about your own activities around the world, Charles, giving back to others is really the most rewarding part of the experience.
Yeah, and you talk about that, and sometimes a lot of people don't realize you can give money, but a lot of times when you give your time and of yourself, there's no price tag on that. And for what you're doing for others, I mean, you've had to have, you're a mentor to some other to some people, but you've had to have mentors also. So tell us a little bit about the mentorship that kind of helps you develop.
Uh, you know, um, your teachers in your life are part of you. And when you're playing music or when you're playing sports, you can hear somebody telling you, now watch out, don't do that, or think about that. And those people are integrated into who you are.
Sure.
And then you become that person in other people's lives. You become internalized as a mentor to those people. For me, I've had many generations of students who I've trained and colleagues, who I've influenced, and I've been there as a student of others, and that generativity is a huge part of passing it on and being able to amplify and enhance what you've learned. Do it in your own way, make your own contribution, bring it to the next person, and hopefully they'll add on to it. So it's that continuity that I think is so important, that you're part of a lineage of teachers and students. And as you get on in your career, it's really important that you feel like you have helped others and passed the wisdom of your teachers on to others.
Right. Yeah. And Peter, clearly you have special gift, and you're in New York, and you're servicing and serving a lot of people daily. What is your office, your facility like? What can people expect when they come to into action at Baltic Street?
Charles, I must tell you, we have a big mission, but we do not have an office.
Okay,
We are basically a not-for-profit whose members of our board of directors promote and create consultation services and training services. And our main product is uh, our mentoring of others and ability to pass our knowledge to help promote other people's programs. So we're not don't have big corporate offices. We're run out of a shoestring, really. And so for us, contributions to our organization, you can see our website. Um,
yep,
there's a donate page. We put those dollars directly into other people's programs. And, for example, we're working with an organization at Rikers Island that mentors um, incarcerated people in mentoring by professional musicians. Our
sure,
affiliated organization, Music on the Inside, creates those mentoring relationships while the person is at Rikers, and then we help promote once they're released to the outside, the those relationships continuing and enhancing their adjustment to living it back in the community. So,
yep,
who we are is what we offer other people, and I feel those kinds of services to people with significant disadvantages are hugely helpful in their successful readjustment in the community.
sure. And Peter, what I meant by facilities,
Yeah,
you are in Rikers Island. You're in the Boys and Girls Club. You're in the elderly facilities. You
yeah,
you collaborate with other programs.
yes.
So what I'm saying is, what can people expect when they come to your program? What do they expect to experience coming to your program?
Well,
Do you use equipment, music to the facility? What could they expect?
yeah, what we bring is the things that those programs need. And
Mhm.
if it could be musical instruments, it could be
Gotcha.
help with paying for training in the peer arts program. Um, we're hoping to get a grant in the Rikers Island Music on the Inside program from a key corporate sponsor of ours to help them create successful housing, employment, job training. We're all about identifying the needs of our program and how we can make a difference in
Sure.
creating more successful services. So I'm always got my ear open for good projects and how can we make that project even better.
Got it. Yeah, understood. So you're customizable, and you collaborate with others, and that's great. And that's how every nonprofit should be when it comes to servicing people, because you need to customize. You can't be a kind of a set way of have a set way of doing things. Well, Peter, we've talked. You educated me and our audience a lot about how you use music for mental health and recovery. Let's give a parting shot to the audience. Now tell them a few things that they should take away from you, and to know that they can go to your website and contact you.
Well, the first takeaway, I think, Charles, is in your own life to understand and appreciate how music can be a valued companion every day, whether it's listening to music or making music, or understanding that the heritage that we have in our lives, starting in our youngest years, that music is a way of not only enjoying the arts, but is a way of remembering who we are as human beings. So I would just first takeaway is it's always there. It's on your phone. You can now tap into the entire recorded history of music in the world in an instant. And as a music therapist, that's just a phenomenal asset to appreciate. But on a larger scale, I would say another takeaway is to recognize how people with significant disadvantages and disabilities and disorders can recover very significant functioning from being able to have access to these services. And the range of applications that I've talked about also include people who are suffering from neurological disabilities, strokes, recovery processes. So look at the way in which people in your life that you love and care about can have access to these services. And if they are limited or don't exist, we're there to try to fill that gap and help develop services that make a difference in people's lives.
Peter, perfect. Thank you for your time, your education, your knowledge. You have a very special gift with music. Continue to impact people's lives and bless the world. Peter, thank you for being on the show.
It's been my pleasure, Charles. Thank you.
Another show of Undiscovered Gems. Thank you for attending and see you next time. Charles Smith as the host. We're out.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Undiscovered Gems with our host, Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds. Brought to you by Pods Entertainment Group.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.